Hey everybody, it's me, John Anthony G. Soltetto. I am the anti-hero, and I'm here today to do a re-recording, re-upload of Grade That Series' first episode, Ms. Marvel. Now, what's Grade That Series versus Grade That Comic? Fair enough questions. So Grade That Comic, I break down either a single issue, a storyline, or an entire series, depending on the length of it, of a comic book. I'll break down the artwork, I will break down the writing, the character development, how it affected me personally, and then I will give it a grade based on the 10.0 Gem Mint scale of your standard comic book slabbery. Whether you prefer CBCS, CGC, PGX, or any number of other companies that are popping up around the world right now. Ms. Marvel is actually the very first Disney Plus MTVU show that I watched. I did watch a few episodes of Marvel What If. I don't necessarily count that since those are episodic and it's also animated. I only made about 3 or 4 episodes into What If before I was just like, I don't really care about this. To be fair with Ms. Marvel, I'm not invested in the character. I don't know a ton about her. She's been around for, was it about 2014 when they first introduced the Kamala Khan character. So she's still a relatively new character, 7 or 8 years out. Of course, filming during the pandemic probably took them a lot longer than they were thinking. But I do have to say that the casting in this series was so spot on. I can't even express just how well it was done. Given that I don't know a ton about Kamala Khan and her corner of the Marvel Universe, I did read New Normal. That's book 1 of volume 1 of the Ms. Marvel series starring Kamala Khan, which also does give you a little bit of an in-depth look on Marvel Point 1, which was her first appearance as Ms. Marvel. When she gets her costume, kind of like why she decides to use her powers, the issues that she's seeing with how the powers work, which was kind of interesting in the comic book, although I couldn't really ascertain why Captain Marvel was her hero. Now, the very beginning of Ms. Marvel is done so interactively and in a lot of fun ways. So there was a lot of cut paper type animation of why Carol Danvers, Ms. Marvel, is the #1 hero in the eyes of Kamala Khan. She's got posters of her all over her room. You know, she was cosplaying her at Avenger Con in episode 1. And she explains that, like, the Avengers were on their last legs when all of a sudden Captain Marvel showed up and saved the day. Which is true from a certain perspective, but, you know, just how Endgame ended versus Kamala's perceptions, because this is the character she puts up on a pedestal, is a little tainted, especially since the Captain Marvel character wasn't the most likable character. And I don't mean that in like, oh, she wasn't like portraying for the fan base or anything like that. I mean, there was nothing about the character that viewers could really latch on to. I didn't feel an ounce of empathy for her. It was basically just an angry character the entire time. And yeah, they explained her anger, but they didn't really give her much of a human side. They didn't give her something for me to relate to versus another character in Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, that I don't have a lot of invested into, that I latched onto very, very easily. And there's a huge difference why. The casting. Iman Vellani, who is cast as Kamala Khan, does such an amazing job. And while maybe I would have preferred somebody who was 16, 17 years old, I'm sure when she was cast, she was about 17. She's 19 now, and I'm sure when they went into filming, she was 17 or 18. So she still fits that bill. She has that youthful exuberance look. She looks like a typical teenager. and I say this in all sincerity and all honesty, there's nothing flashy about her in this role. Like uh, she's not portrayed as too grown up, as we see with a lot of teenage characters are portrayed by somebody in their 20s, sometimes late 20s. And like with 90210, once I went to high school, I was just like, none of these people look like the characters from 90210. So like I was let down by that. But with Iman Vellani, she looks the part, she acts the part, she speaks the part, she interacts with the other characters like I would feel a 16-year-old would, like I kind of did. I was a much darker and angrier teenager than I am now as an adult. And so I can kind of pull back from that and see this character who's a lot more lighthearted, loves her friends, loves her family. And when she sees the disappointment in her parents for disobeying them and going out to Adventure Con and doing things that she's explicitly told not to do, I feel it because I remember being a teenager and doing some things that my folks were displeased with, smoking, staying out late, even though I was 19 years old, getting a tattoo, my mom was mortified when that happened. I was still living in the house, so there was like some complications with that. But I think that Iman Vellani was a perfect choice. I've heard she's also a big fan of the Kamala Khan characters, so that's even better in my book. But sometimes you get somebody who's such a fan that they don't have the differentiation, but I think Iman did a great job. Matt Lintz, who plays Bruno, sometimes known as Brian, during the course of the show. If you haven't watched it yet, you'll find out why that's kind of funny to me. Um, I think his interaction with Kamala was done so extremely well because it felt like there was chemistry as friends, but it also felt like there was tension between them in terms of that they were into each other. Um, but neither one of them had the guts to make that move. And there's one scene in, I believe it's episode 1 or episode 2, where they're sitting on a rooftop working on tech for Avenger Con. So it would have been episode 1. Um, and Kamala makes the statement, and I know there's going to be some people who just immediately dismiss this as some sort of agenda. And she says, brown girls from Jersey City don't save the world. And Bruno says, you're Kamala Khan. Of course you're going to save the world. And there's that weird instance where they start to kind of like lean forward to each other to like kiss. And it's broken up by like just the sheer awkwardness of the moment. And that's what I love about Iman's portrayal of Kamala. She is charmingly awkward. That is an adjective I will use as long as she continues to portray Kamala in this light. Of course, as the character ages and becomes more powerful, I'm sure the character will become a little bit more mature. But I really love the way that she's just, she's not ditzy, she's not aloof. She's awkward because she's a teenager. Like, we're all awkward when we're teenagers. Nobody has it completely together. So I really loved the attention to detail with that. On kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, her friend Nakia, who's played by Yasmin Fletcher, kind of portrays this character who's the same age, but like almost seems like she's got it all together, especially with respect to being Muslim. And in doing so, it kind of makes Kamala seem that much more of a teenager and Nakia seem that much more adult, even though they're the same age, they're in the same classes, they're best friends. Um, but Yasmin Fletcher's portrayal of Nakia being a little bit more straight laced to Kamala's unawareness and awkwardness, it's a great dynamic and they play into each other extremely well, especially in respect to their Islamic faith, where Nakia talks about wearing the hijab and what that means to her and that journey she came to. Even though it was a very, very brief explanation, I still appreciated it. I don't know a lot about Islam, So this show gave me a little bit of insight into the culture, which is surprisingly not unlike growing up in a Latino household when I was a kid. There's very much a class, ruling class kind of system within the family. Like the male is more dominant, and the male is in my family always called him the poshosho. He's the precious one of the family, and that's pretty typical amongst a lot of different cultures. So I could glean from that. Not that I was necessarily the poshosho; that was more like my uncle to my grandmother. But my mom had this sense of duty to the family and to her mom specifically and to her father specifically and the role she had to play, even though she wasn't the oldest child. Um, I also saw the way that Amir, Kamala's brother, was portrayed more like my sister in real life, in that he was very devoted to being Muslim and the culture and the different things that you have to do in being Muslim. My sister was a great student because she worked really hard. She was, citizen of the month kind of thing. She never got in any trouble, but I was very different in that I, fortunately not her, was dealing with a lot of mental health issues and a lot of emotional issues growing up. So, a couple years removed from seeing my sister in school, a lot of administrators and teachers saw me and were like, why aren't you like your sister? Your sister was never in the principal's office. This never happened to your sister. And it's because I'm not my sister. She's not me. Just like Kamala is not her brother and Amir is not his sister. Um, the parents, Muniba and Yusuf, who were played by Zenobia Shroff and Mohan Kapoor, respectively, did such a great job. Now, I come from a single parent household. My dad lived thousands of miles away on the East Coast during my formative years and really didn't come back to the Tucson area and into my physical life until I was an adult and getting ready to go to, college and stuff like that. Um, but the way Muniba dotes over Kamala, and not really dotes, but hovers over her to protect her, and understanding that based on a culture of modesty, that is a big part of being Islamic. That the fears of Kamala kind of straying from the faith and straying from the culture in wanting to go to Avenger Con, and mom knowing that she's seen how women cosplay, and sometimes it's not in the best light, sometimes it's overtly sexy for no real reason that has nothing to do with the character, and it's just like low cut skin tight costumes and thongs and things like that, and that's not what she wants for her daughter. And in all honesty, that's not what Kamala wants for herself either. She's trying to find her identity during the entirety of this series. Um, uh, Yusuf, oh my God, the dad was so amazing in this role. Like, as much as I loved how the mom was portrayed in this role, dad had kind of more this goofy, more lackadaisical like fare when it came to how he viewed things, and not in a bad way, but like he he talked about how like Amir took the faith to a certain extreme, and he was so devoted to it, and that's not necessarily what he wanted to instill in his kids. And he kind of liked how Kamala related to her faith and the culture, but was also her own person. Like, she didn't allow that to be everything about her. Like, she had her friends, and quite honestly, I can't recall, other than Amir's fiance, seeing a lot of interaction with him and other individuals, which, is by design, but at the same time kind of shows how isolated maybe he was because of his devotion. Um, Whereas Kamala, being younger, having a lot to do with uh, being a kid and wanting to be free in that manner, and then finding out uh, the translation to her name was really, really cool at the end. And her dynamic with her dad was done so well in that she wasn't daddy's little girl, but he saw her way different than mom saw her. And mom was very doting in the regard of almost being a helicopter parent, like hovering over Kamala, and that didn't work for her. Whereas dad was just so proud of her just being there because uh, of her kind of being a miracle child, and being so much younger than Amir, and them wanting to have a child for such a long time and it not really being able to happen. I can't necessarily relate to that aspect of it, but I can relate to the aspect that the dynamic between maybe mother and son and mother and daughter and father and daughter and how that looks. Um, my sister and I often joke around about who's the favorite, and she's like, "Your mom's favorite," and I'm like, "I know." She gets mad because I acknowledge that, and but like between me and my sister, I would say, at least growing up, she was definitely our dad's favorite. Um, Me and my dad had a lot of issues growing up, a lot of personality clashes and headbutting and things like that. Um, I know it's a lot different now, but I could safely say during that time period, like I was my mom's favorite, my sister was my dad's favorite. It just kind of the way it happens. Um, and then Samina Ahmed, who plays Sana, um, Kamala's grandmother, is the key to the entire story and like how that works. And their trip to Pakistan, um, in the middle of the series kind of like came out of left field. Like it was almost like, where is this going? But I think they did a really, really good job in kind of like taking that curve so that Kamala could learn a little bit more about her family, but also like the history. And they go into that history and how that plays a pivotal role in Pakistan and India, and how the British like were the colonizers and things like that. And before somebody gets really, really upset and starts to, go off on some sort of a racist tangent, they didn't portray the British as like these evil people. They kind of separated that portion from the history of how Pakistan became its own nation state. Um, and I think in a way that that's good, because this series was already going to be divisive enough amongst people who were mad that this character didn't look like them or didn't talk like them or wasn't their same faith or gender or whatever. Um, but for whatever reason, even though the character is not Latino, I could very much relate to her because of the way she was portrayed. And this might have been one of the truest portrayals of a character and why I now care about Kamala Khan and Ms. Marvel. Kind of like Chris Evans' portrayal of Captain America. I was never a Captain America fan. I've never really liked a character that was, ironically, I'm wearing the Captain America shirt right now. I've never been a Captain America fan because of the whole flag waving thing, and he's a symbol and like that kind of thing. But Chris Evans made him human in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Iman Vellani makes Kamala and Ms. Marvel human in the MTVU and soon to be in the Marvels. So that's the excellence of like the writing, the direction, and the acting. And that's how you can portray a very strong character and a very I think faithful character to the comics, even though, like I said, I've read book one of volume one. There was a lot to it that really worked in that sense, in my eyes. So, in the tradition of Grade That Comic, Grade That Series is going to use the same 10.0 Gem Mint perfect grading scale. I give Ms. Marvel from Disney Plus a 9.8. This is what Mint minus, as pretty much as perfect as you can get. 9.9s and 10.0s are extremely rare, and maybe as a series goes on, if they continue after the Marvels, this grade could go up or go down as see fit. But Ms. Marvel gets a 9.8, which is the highest grade that I've given to anything. And Bitterroot, I believe, got a 9.8, and that might have been the only other project that I've reviewed that got a 9.8. So until next time, please definitely check out the links in the description below if you want to back my Patreon. I'm going to be putting a lot more stuff in there, including some new designs that I'm working on, some stuff for the new horror project. So you'll be the first to see it. It won't be going on other parts of social media. I'm also thinking of doing some tutorial videos where I show you how I'm drawing certain characters and certain aspects of things, and just having those be a part of Patreon. Starts at just $1. And if you'd like to support an independent creator, regardless of how you feel about these videos, that would mean a lot to me. I've also got a Teespring store up that is running and has 10 different designs right now as of this recording. 8 of them are Bubba Patrol designs, and I'll be working on some other designs that I'll kind of put in their own shop at the same time because they're a little bit more adult, as we should say. But I do hope you guys are taking care of yourselves and each other. I'm off to work starting tomorrow, and getting my second booster as well. So remember, heroes wear masks not just for themselves, but to protect those that they love. Till next time.